Welcome to the A.L.L podcast.
We're the Academy of Logic and Light. I'm Megan.
I'm Kat.
I'm Julie. We are an ethical community education platform that provides a safe space for people to practice their spirituality without indoctrination.
Awesome.
Yay.
It's working. Okay, so hi, I'm Julie with the Academy of Logic and Light. We're here with Kat and Ashley, and we're here talking today about inner child. I'm just gonna let Ashley take over. Can you tell us who you are, what you do?
Yeah. So my name is Ashley Woolfenden. I am an inner child advocate. I'm also a breathwork facilitator, hypnotherapist. I do like design work, kind of intuitive design, and like help people that are entrepreneurs or wanting to be entrepreneurs. Like I feel like people have a lot of ideas, but they don't know how to like where to put it, how to organize it, how to like put it into a course or retreat or whatever they're wanting to create. So I help them kind of like let their creations come and land. But yeah, I love inner child work is like one of my number one things that I do. It is what really helped me like unleash my freedom in my life. I was a very anxious like teenager and young adult and into my early adult years, I just was like crippling with anxiety. Like I didn't really know what to do with it. And I would like get to the point that I would like dissociate out of my body so much and that I didn't even know what that was, or like never had I heard that word before. And so really it just felt like I wasn't in my body at all. It was like all in my head, felt like I was like up here watching everything happen. And so I've been going to therapy for like years and years, and I was like super self-aware of all this stuff. But then I was like, okay, what do I do with this awareness? And I had like shame about it, right? I had so much shame that I was carrying for all of my feelings, all of it. And so I really just like, I had found this gorgeous inner child lover and advocate. Her name's Liz Hayes, who I started working with and then like became certified in her method, the Sync Up method, which is just a healing modality that really connects your inner child and your inner being, or yourself with what you're wanting and your creations and your desires and all of that. And I like when I had first heard about inner child work, I was like, no, thank you. Like, I don't like have any trauma. Like, I'm fine. Like, I definitely had a lot of trauma, but it was like, I don't want to go digging. Like, we don't have to go there. And so through Liz, I like had found out what inner child work now means to me is your inner child isn't just this version of you, like this young little version of you. It's not just this childlike version of you. It's like the human aspect of you, the part of you that chose to come to this earth, the part of you that holds all of the emotions and beliefs and desires and creations. All of that is like within the inner child. And then you have like your inner being, which is your like the soul aspect of you, the forever aspect of you, the part of you that's connected to the universe, to God, to your divine team, to non-physical, whatever like word you like to use there. And so what I had learned is like when the two come together and like actually have communication, when you talk to your inner child and let your inner child speak as well, like both are so important. I think when we think about inner child work, it's like, oh, I just have to go like hear her, or like what does she need kind of thing. But also it's like she wants to hear from you too. Like there's versions of you that we hold on to, like past versions of ourselves that need this, that are looking for something from you, from these older versions, sort of like reparenting ourselves, really. It's like how I may describe it. But yeah, So that's within my work. I do a lot of one-on-one work. I do group work as well. I have some courses and retreats coming up as well. So that's super exciting.
Oh, amazing. Tell me about the retreats.
Yeah, so the retreat, so the first one is going to be down in St. George, so like southern Utah, and it's really just going to be about like coming back into our bodies and including like all of these parts of us, soothing the parts of us that need soothed. I mean, like I'm always someone that says like when women gather, like healing happens. I think when humans gather, healing happens, right? But it's so true that like we're so good at taking life like super freaking seriously and like forgetting to have fun and like forgetting that like we can like feel good. Like we're just like robotic sometimes. And so to like give yourself a place to land and be held by other people. And like you're not just like being held, but you feel like you're contributing and like what you say, like even your energy is just like super important to the whole group. And that's why I like love retreats, because it's not just about like, okay, if I'm leading it, it's not just about, okay, like I'm gonna like tell you what to do and like I'm leading. No, it's like a circle. It's like your energy and your frequency like super matter, and they like affect the outcomes of the retreats, and like your story might have a ripple effect in somebody else and vice versa, right? Like we don't know, like it's usually like the tiny things that we say that we don't even think matter that like are blowing other people's minds and change everything for them, right? So this retreat it's really about like coming into our bodies and like hearing ourselves. Oftentimes we can't even like hear our inner child. We don't even like know how to do that. And so that's something that during the event in July that I'm doing with you guys is really what I'm like looking forward to as well. It's like, how can we hear ourselves? How can we understand ourselves? How can we include our inner child more, right? Like, how can we bring her in or him in or them in and hold them and love them and hear them and let them speak and like love them and just like fill them up. Because even like the today version of you, right? Like what do they need? And I think that's something that's like so missed. It's like we don't always need to go into our past, because what our beliefs are in the past all has to do with like right now too. We're all holding them right now.
Yeah, I love what you said about, yeah, totally. And I love what you said about like what inner child means to you, that it's not just like you when you were a child. It's like all of these pieces of being human that you were starting to like come into maybe as a child. Because I do like inner child work, not that it's just kind of a foreign concept to me. I think because I always had that outlook of like, I loved my childhood. I don't have any complaints about my childhood. I feel like I had a fantastic childhood. Sure, there was trauma. My parents divorced and we moved and, you know, all of the things. And I think it's really such a human thing, probably particular for females, I would imagine, more so because we're so adaptable, to have the mindset of, well, it was so much worse for other people. So therefore my trauma doesn't matter. Like, even though we minimize those things that happen to us because they're the smaller parts of what happened, they're still valid and they're still there and they still play on that loop until you look at it and say whatever needs to be said about those things. And I never put it together until you just said that, about that it's the whole thing. It's not like a separate part of you that was your child or you as a child. It's you, like
it's still you,
still there. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think even the word trauma, like people are like, oh, like that's such a big word sometimes, but all trauma really is an experience that gives you, or like that you perceive as you are negative or the world is negative in some way. And so how like the inner child like works, or my understanding of it is, so we're babies, we're born babies, and we're sensing, like we don't have like thoughts going through our head, we're just like sensing, okay, like how far away is our mom, like do I feel safe, what's this energy feel like that's all we're just sensing. How do I feel like, and of course we're not having these thoughts, but I'm giving you these thoughts just to like but we're just sensing the world. And then around ages, and it just depends on the individual, but around ages like 6 to 9, we sort of have this like etheric layer like shed, and like this part in our brains develop that starts to sort of compare everything to whatever beliefs and things that you have. So if you have an experience, let's say maybe your mom was busy or something, and you tried to tell her something and she wasn't paying attention, and then you perceive that as like, oh, well, I'm not good enough. Then you have this belief in which your brain starts to look everywhere for reasons why that's true. And it does this to keep us safe. And so it's like, it can be really frustrating when you're like, oh, I don't want to hold on to that anymore. But when we soften and recognize like every belief that you are holding now, you created to keep your safety, which is like really freaking brilliant. It's actually really smart. And so even though now those things are no longer serving you, we can still look at it and say like, hey, like that was actually really smart. I'm going to let go of like the shame I have for that. And I want something new, and I want a different belief, and I want something different in my life. So I love that you brought that up about trauma, because it's literally, it could be any tiny thing. Of course, your mom was probably just doing something, it wasn't intentionally like, oh, you were hit in the face or you were like abused like that, like that perception was still like is alive, and it could be the tiniest little thing. It's just how we are perceiving it makes it so real for us.
Yeah,
I find
totally.
it so interesting too, because even like with my siblings, each one of us has such a different perception of what our childhoods look like. And my sister was like, well, we did this and this, and I was like, well, I only really remember this part, and she remembers this, but my experience with that was this part. So it's just like kind of interesting, but also like when we're now adults talking about our childhood, we're like, oh, okay, well, that was your experience and it's okay, but this was my experience, and now we're like, it's getting a broader picture of what it was. I guess it's interesting.
Yeah. And especially because each of you individually have different things that your brain is trying to like find truth in. And our brain only looks for things that like we tell it to. So like a quick exercise I love for this is like, okay, if you're looking around the room, find all the red things. And it's like, okay, like how many red things can you find? Okay, now close your eyes. How many red things were there? Like how many did you see? And then, okay, how many blue things did you see? You have no idea. You weren't looking. Like you can be like, okay, here's the red things, but you weren't looking for the blue things. So what you tell it to look for, like that's what it's going to look for. So if you have like certain perceptions, so of course that's why like siblings, like me and my sibling could not be furthest like from the same at all. And like and people are always asking that, like, I don't know, like how you guys were raised in the same house. And it's just like, well, yeah, because we just have different, like we perceive things so differently. And then it like built on them. Yeah, it's really like crazy to think about too. And I mean, I have friends that I have been friends with since I was like 1 year old, and 1 year old. And it's interesting to like talk to her even about like stories or things that come up. She's like, that is not even close to how I remember it, which is just like so funny. But like that doesn't make either of our experiences wrong or untrue either. It just means that like, okay, we perceived it differently, and there can be more than one truth that exists, which is like so freeing to even like understand.
Honestly, yeah. I've been using that one a lot. Two things can be true in this instance, and that's okay. And sometimes three things.
Yes, multiple things. Yes, I know. Yeah. Sometimes, well, it's like I think that we're taught that like we need to be right. I mean, we're like literally taught that from school to like, oh, like wrong is bad, like getting things incorrect or making mistakes, right? We have to be right. So that like drives this like need within us. And when we actually take a step back, it's like, oh yeah, it's not about right and wrong. It's about like, okay, like that's your experience and here's mine, and honoring both of them or many of them.
Yeah, I love that. It's crazy because I think too, we forget that our brains are still pretty work off of like our like pre-human instincts, basically. Like you were saying that like everything you learn is to protect you. And all of that stems from like your environment, living outside for a millennia before houses were built. So your whole brain is wired for safety and protection above everything else. So now that we have safety and protection, most of the people in the world, it's looking for danger in places that aren't necessarily dangerous, like in our homes. And in the one time that you got ignored or somebody snapped at you or, you know, your friend took her toys and went home, those types of things that we otherwise wouldn't perceive as dangerous become danger. And then it just plays in that loop, like you were saying, that like, oh, I must not be good enough. I must not be smart enough. I must not, something's wrong with me. Otherwise this danger, like I'm in the wrong place. Otherwise this danger wouldn't be coming at me right now, which is wild that we have that part of our brain that just operates in the background all the time because we're like, we have tiny computers, we can contact everyone in the world in space and do all these things, but our brain is still like, no.
Yeah. Like, or I call it the reptile brain. It's just like literally totally here to keep you like safe and all the things. And even within that, like there is like these core things that like every inner child needs. And they are very like they stem from these very like reptile like things, right? It's safety. It's being seen and heard, being accepted, right? Like if you think about our like ancestors way back, if they weren't part of the tribe, like you did not survive. And so that's a very like actual like mammal reptile, very what is the word I'm like looking for? Feral? No. Primal? Like animalistic, primal. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. I'm like, I knew it was that. Very like primal instinct within us, right? So safety, being heard and seen, accepted, loved, like all of those are like needs of the inner child that need to be filled. And so if there are any times that you're like perceiving, oh, I'm not receiving this, that's like, we perceive that as like a negative thing, which then creates those beliefs that we hold on to. So a practice, like if I notice that these things are coming up or anytime that you're like getting activated or triggered, or we love that word, anytime we're feeling that activation within us, maybe a discomfort, maybe it's like anger or sadness or whatever. I always like to ask myself the question, okay, like what does this mean about me? Like, okay, maybe, like, I'll give you the silliest example. So my partner, I would ask him like to not like put my tea strainers in the dishwasher because they would like get bad. And I would ask him, and he like wouldn't do it. And I was like, okay, but I just like kept getting so angry and upset about it. I'm like, why is this bothering me so bad? It's not even a big deal. And I'm like, okay, what am I making this mean about me? Like, what does this mean about me? It's like, oh, if he isn't like here, like I don't feel heard. Like if he's doing a thing, it's because he's not like hearing me. Like, does he not care? Is he not hearing me? So it's like, oh, I mean, it means that I don't feel heard. And so then I, as a now adult, can go to my inner child and say like, hey, like you are heard, right? I think a lot of times that we feel like we have to have these things from other people. And it's beautiful when we can receive them from others, right? But but we can also like do the reparenting like within ourselves and like give our inner child, like even if it's just like you're closing your eyes and visualizing your inner child, maybe it's writing to them, whatever practice you like to connect to your inner child, I think is like beautiful. And there's like so many that we can use, but to like see her and say like, hey, like you are her, like what do you like, why is this mattering to you? Like, what does this make you feel like? And oftentimes, like, this is going to sound like nutso, but oftentimes, when I like do this practice, all of a sudden, like, whatever it is, it like just like works out, and it sounds crazy. So like that thing with the tea strainers happened, and so I like took it to myself. I took it to my inner child, and I'm like, hey, what's up? Like, what are you making this mean about you? Like, what are you feeling? And I just let her like speak it all, and I'm like, okay, now that you let it all out, like, what is it that you're wanting? Well, I want to feel heard, and I would like my tea strainers not to be ruined, right? It was so silly. Well, all of a sudden, like, so that was like the first time I was like, okay, I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to go have a conversation with myself and with my inner child. And then all of a sudden, he's never put them back in the dishwasher. Like, didn't even say anything. And like, I have a million of these types of examples because it sounds crazy, but that like shows like the power of your inner child, because you can like, just by like hearing her, it's like she like puts it down, and like your beliefs and everything create your reality. And so if you can like shift it, your reality changes. And it's like, what? Like, I don't know, you kind of feel like it's really cool, like magician.
Yeah.
Instant
Well, it's kind of like quantum jumping in certain ways too, because like if you're going back and giving yourself what you needed from the beginning, then you're doing some sort of like healing work. And I've heard like so many crazy stories about people talking about seeing someone in their vision when they were a kid or something, and then like fast forward to the future, they like did some work, and then they went to visit themselves as a child, and they realized like it was them that was them that they needed. Just like interesting, so beautiful.
And like, I've actually like been thinking about this a lot recently. I don't know why, but it's so cool because I think about when I am like in meditations or talking to the past inner children, like also it's really cool too, because I think about, okay, well, there's probably future versions of me that are coming to me now, and also like healing me, like me now. So like to be able to open yourself of like, okay, what is my future inner child? What wisdom do they have for me now too? It's also kind of a cool thing to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. When I do a lot of like channeling or meditating and stuff, I talk to my highest self, and ideally she's done more work.
Yes.
Fingers crossed.
Yes.
Has more figures out than I do.
Yes. No, I love, any type of like higher self, like just like tuning into like your own wisdom, which is like so cool. It's just like this sort of future version of your own wisdom, even though also like what is time? Like, what is the future?
Yeah. Non-linear, that's for sure.
Yeah. But it is really cool that we can sort of like, without even like giving our power away, like it's all within us. Like it's all of it is within us. And so it's cool because you can access like all these versions of you through our minds and through our feel like sensation. Like what? It's just, I don't know.
So
it's
cool.
Very mind blowing to me. I do this like every day, and I'm like, yes. I don't think it will ever not be cool to me. It's like, I don't know why, it just like reminds me of like Matilda. So dumb. But like, that was my favorite show growing up. And I was like, oh, cool, I'm gonna be magic like she is. But like, I didn't know what that meant. And now it's like, okay, I'm gonna embody my little Matilda. Just kidding.
I love that.
Yeah. I mean, it actually makes so much sense, right? Because the key of manifestation is embodiment. You have to be what it is that you're trying to acquire. So if you are trying to manifest peace, it makes sense to have that conversation with your inner child to find out what they need to be at peace. And once that's resolved, it's manifested. Like all those things, just like you were saying, just click into place, and then it's just done. You know? Instead of just like, I want to get to that point where I am there. But
like a desire. It's like we plant seeds in like the future, like, oh, that's a future thing. That's a future thing. But when we go and like do this work, it all of a sudden, it's like it's not even like an awareness of it. It just kind of happens to you as you do the work. All of a sudden you give space to embody it. And it's not, I mean, obviously there's like work involved, but like oftentimes it's like, oh, whoa, like, wait, whoa, that just like really happened. Like, that's actually really cool.
Oh,
I love that. That's so awesome.
What's like like if someone's in a thought like spiral, I know you kind of just gave a little bit of an example of like listening to yourself and pulling yourself out of the complicated situation to have the conversation, but is there something that is like a quick exercise that can help stop the thought pattern? Sometimes you get stuck in that spiral and it's just impossible to get out of. What advice would you give?
Yeah. So I like to give my inner child sort of like a form of like letting it out. Like, okay, like you can like, I'm going to give you like 5 minutes, 15 minutes and like spit it all out, whether you're like just speaking it, whether you are having like an internal conversation, whether you're writing it, whatever it is. So, I call this like discharging emotion. Like it's like releases like the charge behind the emotion and just like letting the inner child get it all out. And like often the things that we're saying, like they're kind of like, they're not like true. They're kind of feel gross to us maybe, but it's just like the energy that needs to move. So what I like to do is sort of like create a container with my hands and just like imagine, and maybe container feels like a gross word. So like an energetic bubble. And then like your inner child comes into this energetic bubble, and then your inner being comes in. And maybe if you hear like other people, if you feel like somebody else is there with you, you can like make your little bubble smaller and like squeeze them out, and then you can get more space. And then it's like, okay, even noticing like within this little bubble, it's like, whoa, exhale. Kind of takes the edge off a bit. And then I just give space for my inner child to talk here. So this energetic bubble is like a completely safe space for you. Like that you don't have to disclose this bubble to anybody. Like this is just you, your inner child, and your inner being. Your inner being again is like this soul aspect of you, the aspect of you that's connected to like non-physical, divine, God, universe, whatever word you like there. So within this space, like what is it that you need? Like your inner being wants to hear you. What is it that you need? Like maybe you just need to let it all out and just start saying. Maybe you need to express like what you're hating or disliking right now. Maybe you need to express what you love, what you're wanting, your desires. And I sort of like to imagine as I'm doing this, maybe there's a specific visualization that comes to you. I'm a super like, I love visualizations. And I'm also like, love like the feeling of things. And so within this bubble, I like to sort of imagine like whatever my inner child is saying, like go to my inner being and like just let them take everything so that you're not like carrying it all. And so whatever it is that you're wanting, I just come here. And after you let the emotion out and after you feel completed, maybe it's like, oh, I hate the way this is going right now. This is so gross. It makes me want to throw up. Like, I can't believe she did that. Whatever it is, like the gossipy things, like you can have in your internal space here. And then, okay, like now that you let that out, what do you want now? Like, what do you want to feel right now? Well, I want to feel, maybe it's like peace. Maybe I'm wanting to feel clarity. Maybe I'm wanting to feel freedom. Whatever it is, like just asking your inner child, like, what is it that you're wanting now? Like, since you're here in this time and space, what do you want now? And oftentimes the inner child is like, well, I don't know. Or maybe and I say she for the inner child often, so excuse that, maybe like they as the inner child just want to feel heard, or maybe they're just wanting 5 minutes to themselves. Maybe they're wanting a blanket wrapped around them. Maybe they're wanting a fresh drink. Maybe they want to go stand out in the sunshine. Maybe they want to take a really deep breath. Like, doesn't have to be anything crazy. It could be very small, and these small things can build up. Or maybe it's a bigger thing. Like, maybe she wants to go shopping, or they want to go shopping, or maybe they want to go on a vacation, or maybe they are wanting something specific. But there's always a piece of something now that you can give yourself. So even if it's like, oh, I want a vacation, I want a break, what is that vacation giving to you? What is the feeling? You can always give the feeling to yourself now, which is sort of embodying, like we were talking about, this manifesting. And so whether you're feeling activated or anything, like giving a space for your inner child to speak, and then what is it that you're wanting now? Like moving into the desire of it instead of staying in the gross of it, or what feels gross. It's not gross. Your emotions and everything and your beliefs and your thoughts and your feelings are not gross, even if you feel they are gross. And it's like, okay, now what do you want? It's like, oh, I want a deep breath. I want an ice cream cone. Okay. And tuning into our like preferences too. Right? A lot of times we sort of abandon our preferences because we think that it's like, oh, you're selfish, or you're bad, or you're wrong, or whatever. But through our preferences, we kind of get into our creation mode. So when we're in survival mode, right? I like to like sort of like down here, when we're in survival mode, it's like we can't even hear ourselves. It's like everything maybe like feels gross. It feels hard, sticky. And so survival mode and creation mode, like they can't happen at the same time. And so when we get into our creation mode, it's not like you have to even like make this big like painting or create like that way, but it's like tuning into like creating your own life. Like, okay, what is it that you're wanting now? What is it? Like, even if you feel like you don't have time for yourself, you can always give yourself a moment of something, whatever it is, whether it's a drink or a deep breath, or like giving yourself a specific feeling that you're needing, or a softness, or speaking to your own inner child, whatever that is.
That's beautiful.
I love that. Yeah. That was like one of my goals for this year. I read a book called The Desire Map. I can't remember the name of the author, Rachel something. And she kind of talks about like that, like think about the different aspects of your life and what feeling you want to have in those places. How do you want to feel at work? How do you want to feel at home? And then you create your goals around that feeling. Mm-hmm. And whatever makes you happy are the things that you need to, that's your yes. Everything else is a no. And it's not like temporary happiness, like, oh, I'm going to be happy going to the pool today with a cooler of margarita mix, or whatever it is. It's like, you want to be, if health is top of your list and you want to feel healthy and you want to feel strong, that temporary happiness is going to hinder your long-term happiness. So you have to like think about those kind of long-term goals. And it's so counter for people to set goals based off of preferences and feelings, and like what you were just saying, like how you want to feel, or like God, what's the word?
Like embody?
Yeah, embody. Thank you. Yeah, like how you want to embody that place in your life.
Mm-hmm. And something else that I like love doing as you're saying this is like, it's like making the mundane like magical, right? It's not about going on these vacations and then feeling free for that and then coming back and you're like, oh, here's my robot again. I'm taking everything so seriously. It's like, okay, like I have to do the dishes. I'm choosing to do the dishes because I don't want all these dishes in my sink. And okay, how can I make them more fun? Maybe, and it's like even just like, okay, feeling the water on your hands, or turning on music and dancing, or making yourself a fun drink. Like that's like my I don't know why that's like my thing that I do. I'm like, I always have a fun drink, like because it makes me so happy, whatever it is. It's always like a little celebration. um, so it's like, how can you make these things that like your day to day that you're choosing into, right? You're choosing to feed yourself. It's like, how can I make this like more enjoyable? Like, how can I romanticize this? Like, and oftentimes we do that like through our senses, through touching, through hearing, through smelling, through tasting, like all of that. And so the more you can like tune into your senses, it's like the more like delicious life feels.
I love that.
I love that. Yeah. That's awesome.
So fun.
Would you say that inner child work is more, the only other person that I've talked to about inner child work that is like a facilitator, does a lot of work through movement. In your experience, would you say that's yes, or would you say it's equal parts like just sitting in stillness, or is there a lot of verbal conversation that happens with people, or like, I guess I'm just curious of the process of like how you work through some of those like things in the practical world.
Yeah. So I think that it could look different. And I think like whether it's like movement or stillness or not has to do with each inner child's preference. And maybe it's like a mix of both. And like maybe it's like dominantly one or then the other. But I do think that like, I mean, for me, most of like the inner child work has been done through like stillness, or not even necessarily stillness. Maybe it's like journaling or writing, or just like having this inner conversation between these two aspects of myself. And so like, and how I do it like with my clients is, I just kind of tune into their energy and sort of channel like their inner being and like speak to them that way, as well as like, okay, what's coming up for you now? Because sort of as we like talked about, whatever's coming up for you now is like the seed of it was probably somewhere in your childhood, or the seed of it was somewhere within your inner child of all these like past aspects of you. And so we can get to like the feeling through like the whatever's coming up for you now. And so just even like helping talk through that and like really just giving them space to see it in like a different way, to like literally come like from maybe one perspective and then just see it in a whole, like just see it from a different angle completely. And oftentimes it's like, because the inner child, we're in survival mode and the inner child can't hear themselves.
Oh, okay.
And so once we let them hear themselves and turn them around, and you're like looking and actually connecting with your divine team or your, the universe. And you can do that in so many ways, like go out and in nature and meditation and through movement and yoga and somatic practices, like breath work. There's so many ways that you can feel that connection, between like that energetic connection between like non-physical and ourselves, or even just like the physical, like getting your hands into Mother Earth, like whatever practice that you enjoy, that you like, whatever like makes you feel connected, like that's the goal, right? Like that's where we can hear ourselves and where we can start shifting from that survival mode to creation mode. Because like a lot of us were also raised in survival mode. Like that's like the only thing that like we've known. And if you think about like the generations past, like of course, like they just needed to survive. So it was like there was no space for children to have emotion and to have all of these things. There was no space for them to be heard or seen or anything, which then carries to like our generations and future generations too, because we like, they haven't, like previous generations maybe necessarily haven't learned how to like deal with their own emotions, and then, we pass it on. And so we were just raised in a survival mode, and it's like, that's what we're used to. And oftentimes what we're used to feels safe to our brains, to our little reptile brains. and so when we can, find our safety, like I always say, like, this is from my inner child coach, Liz. She always says, we grow to the comfort of our inner child. And that's so true. Like the inner child, once they're finding comfortability, and safety, they're like, okay, I can take another step. Okay, I can look a different way. And so sometimes it's just like putting your toe in, like, okay, like, how would this feel? Like, is this your preference? Do you like this? Or maybe just like letting yourself have 1 minute of like trusting yourself, and then you go back in 2 minutes. Like it could be these tiny baby steps that actually create huge momentums within us, that like, however it is that you like to connect with yourself too, like that's when we're connecting then like to ourselves, our bodies, like then we can shift those like survival into creation mode.
I love that. Thank you. That's awesome. That's amazing.
Yeah. And powerful.
Yeah. And it's like, it's so like, you can be doing anything. Like you don't have, I feel like some people, it's like, oh, meditation feels like so much or whatever. Like, okay, then don't do it that way. Like find a different way. Like what way do you prefer? Like maybe it's like, okay, I like to just like sit here and breathe, or maybe it's like, I just like to put my hands under the water and be with myself. Like that might be crazy, but it's like, I want to connect to the water, to the earth, like go to lay on the grass. Like there's so many ways that we can shift into creation mode, whether it's like through art, like you're creating something that way, like with your hands, or maybe you're building something, or it could be anything. Maybe it's just like choosing, do you want like vanilla or chocolate ice cream? Do you want like ranch chips or cheddar? Or like it's through our choices and through our preferences. Like our preferences are there for a reason. And when we honor our preference and don't like wrong our preference, like I believe our preferences guide us to like our ultimate purpose and desire of like why we came here, like whatever that is for you.
Cool Ranch Dorito for sure.
See, I'm a cheese girl. I love it, and I honor you in that. I love it. Love it.
Wow, that's so beautiful. Fun. I'm so excited for our July circle. I think it's going to be so powerful and like, so connecting. I'm just so excited, and I'm so excited to see you in person again.
I know. I'm so excited to see you guys both in person and just to like be and connect. Like I love being in person so much because it's just like the energy is so real and it's like visceral and you can feel it and it's so fun. So yeah, I'm really excited for the July event. I'm really just going to go into like how you can really hear yourself in more ways of connecting with your inner child, as well as like do an embodiment practice of like actually going to your inner child and sort of like a meditation hypnotherapy vibe with it too.
Love. And would you say this is something like, even as we always say our events are usually all ages, but like what if someone's like a teenager and then like this is their first experience with it? So like, I don't know how interesting is that to like start tapping into it like early?
Oh yeah, it's actually like so cool. I love working with young people because it's like they don't have all this conditioning in the way and like this like buildup of beliefs and evidence of why these things are true, right? It's like actually really fun because even working with children, it's like everything's so possible, and it's like they don't have limits. Like they're just like, oh yeah, this is like what I think. And so yeah, I'd say any age, like you can always connect to these versions of yourself, right? I call them inner child, but it's really just like any, like it could be the yesterday version of you. It could be the today version an hour ago, like whatever, that's still your inner child. So yeah, any age.
Love that.
I love that.
So freaking fun. I love this like conversation so much. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Where, like, can people find you? Do you have a website or social media?
Yeah, so my website is Wolf Wellness. It's 2 O's, WOOLF, wellness.com. And then all my social media is Ashley Woolfie, also with 2 O's. That's like how my last name is spelled. So Ashley, ASHLEY, WOOLFIE.
Yay.
That's like Instagram, TikTok, all the things.
All the good stuff.
Awesome.
Yes.
Awesome. We'll put the links underneath below. It's also helpful for those listening, maybe driving, that they can have access. Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much. Is there any final thoughts? Anything that you want to leave people talking with?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the thing that just keeps coming up is just let yourself dream and create your life. Pick the one thing that feels good to you right now. That's how you build the momentum. You don't have to build these huge manifestation things, but if you're just starting out, especially with inner child work, just pick the one thing. What do you want? And ask yourself these questions. Maybe you go back in the podcast and listen to the little portion of our little energetic bubble where we can hear ourselves too. At any time. It's always one of my favorite things to do.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah. Awesome.
Love it. Thank you guys so much. This has been so fun and enjoying the conversation so much.
Yay, thank you.
Thanks for joining the A.L.L podcast.
To find out more, you can find us online at academyoflogicandlight.org or on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok at Academy of Logic and Light.
If you live in the Salt Lake Valley, we'd love to see you at one of our upcoming events.
And don't forget to support our growth by joining our Patreon.
Until next time, lead with logic and light.